Welcome to the Leading Together podcast, Insights for Delaware's Tomorrow. In each episode, we sit down with the top minds and leaders from across Delaware and the nation for them to share their perspectives in ways that help advance FSE's mission, which is to raise awareness, build capacity, and really elevate the role of school board leadership across our communities. I'm your host, Julia Kelleher, Executive Director of First Aid Educate. Thank you for joining us, and I have a fantastic guest for you today. We are honored to be joined by Representative Madinah Wilson-Anton, who serves in Delaware's 26th district in the House of Representatives. She's been there since 2020 and was elected at just 26 years old, making history as the first practicing Muslim in the Delaware General Assembly. Originally from Newark, she's a graduate of the Charter School of Wilmington and the University of Delaware. So sort of a lot real strong roots here and knowledge of the Delaware community. She has 2 degrees, one in international relations and Asian studies and a master's in urban affairs and public planning. So fluent in multiple languages, brilliant woman, hardworking, has had an incredible trajectory. In her role right now in government, she focuses on education funding reform, affordable housing, healthcare access, and government transparency. She's the chair of the Revenue and Finance Committee and the vice chair of the Technology and Telecommunications. So who we have here with us today has a deep perspective, a lot of experience, and I'm so grateful because all of these topics are really relevant to Delaware and the quality of life here, which I think brings us back to education and why education is so important. So finally, the big topic of in Delaware public education is the funding formula. She was a huge supporter of that, and also advanced programs for free breakfast for students and expanding Medicaid. So I'm so thrilled that you're here. Thank you for your service to Delaware. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for caring so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation with you today. So
Great.
Thanks again.
Sure. All right. So you're a history maker here. You checked off a lot of boxes and have done a lot of big things. Why politics? Why did you get into this? Why this work?
It's a good question. So people ask me that kind of often. And so I've had to sit and think about, my first memory that I can remember around politics was in a public school at Garger-Cobbs Middle School. I had an elective called Career Exploration. And we took an exam where, we were asked questions about what we were good at or what we thought we were good at and what we found interesting. And this program spit out interpreter, translator for me. And so I went into high school with the idea that, I like languages. I'm good at languages. I'm going to study languages and be an interpreter. And I went with that idea all the way till I got to college and realized pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be as competitive in those spaces as someone who only speaks English at native level fluency. But I was always interested in the other part, right? Because I wanted to be a UN interpreter. I wanted to be in that space in global politics. And so a friend of mine was like, well, why don't you switch your major? And I learned a little bit about international relations and was still in the mindset of being a staff person, right? Like someone who would be supportive to a diplomat. And I had a conversation with my father and I mentioned that to him. And he was like, well, why not just be the person, like be the diplomat? It turns out he had seen a movie called The Interpreter and like, he didn't like what happened to the character. And he was like, I don't want my daughter to be in that situation. I still haven't seen that movie. And like after I won the election and told him that story, he was like, oh yeah, I just said that because I didn't want you to be in that situation. He wasn't like trying to give me profound inspiration. But kind of related to what we're going to talk about, I think today, education, right? So I went to Garger-Cobbs Middle School. That's where I got my career exploration class. It's also where I was introduced to the topic of school funding and the referendum process. And I didn't actually know at the time how antiquated it was. I learned that as an intern working in the State House when a group of family members and community advocates came to Dover to advocate to change the funding system. I think this was 2017, 2018, leading up to the lawsuit that actually brought us to where we are now with the reassessments. And I had a conversation with the legislator who I was working for at the time, and he said, yeah, they're right. They've done all this research. They have all these ideas on how to fix the funding system, but it's never going to happen. And he said it's never going to happen because there's not the political will to make it happen.
Hmm.
And that radicalized me, because that in that moment I realized it wasn't a shortage of ideas or
Hmm.
research, policy papers. It was a shortage of political will, and that's why
Hmm.
things were the way that they were.
Hmm.
And that kind of sparked the thought for me, like, maybe I should think about running, because I wouldn't be afraid to vote for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I realized in that time, as now like a 23, 24-year old, that the referendum process that they were talking about changing, I had experienced at Gar Cobb's Middle School in science
Hmm.
class, where our teacher, this is like, you told, I think, the listeners and viewers how old I
Yeah.
am, just if you can
Uh-huh.
do the math quickly. But when I was in 7th grade, I remember being in science class, and our teacher he copied a worksheet and put it on a transparency, and then put that on the projector. So we're all looking at a worksheet on the screen, and he said, get some paper out, copy it down, and then answer the questions. And, we're a bunch of like 11, 12-year-olds.
Hmm.
Why are we doing this? This is boring.
Hmm.
And he said, because the referendum failed, we're all rationing paper. So we're not just making worksheets willy nilly. And we're like, what is a referendum? All
Uh-huh.
we know is we don't want to do this. We just answer
Right.
the questions and have fun. And so it was in that moment, as a young 22, whatever year old, that
Uh-huh.
I went back to 7th grade, and I'm like, that's why we had that experience, was because we do school funding in this antiquated way. Like,
Uh-huh.
it broke my brain. And whenever we
Uh-huh.
talk about referendums, I'm reminded of that experience, and of the experiences of so many other Delaware students since then that are still
Hmm.
experiencing this in our classrooms.
Hmm. Wow, that's amazing. It's an amazing story. It's funny how when you reflect on your life and you can see these events that become so pivotal, and I think you can tell that you thought about it, but because the through line is there, but maybe when it was happening, it wasn't as clear,
No,
but a little
no,
bit in
I just was a
retrospect, yeah.
kid, like, can we just
Yeah.
like get to something
It,
fun? Can we do like
right.
rockets and stuff again?
Yeah.
Or like, yeah. And
Yeah.
I have a
Totally.
lot of great memories um from my time at Gogger Cobb's. And actually, my
Hmm.
French teacher just messaged me on Facebook the other day and was like, I heard you on the
Wow.
radio.
Oh
And
my
like,
gosh.
yeah, so like, I mean, I have so many amazing memories from my time there,
Hmm.
and I've been back since being elected, and
Hmm.
because of how we've not kept up with how we should be funding our schools, a lot of the opportunities that were there when I was a student are no longer there.
Oh wow.
Like, me and some of my friends used to help the librarian, and we would go
Hmm.
in and we would sort books. The
Hmm.
library is not even open anymore because they can't
Really?
hire someone to staff it. Yeah. I took French for 2 years when I was in middle school, not offered anymore. Some of the artwork I saw up on the walls was there from when I was a student. And it's
Wow.
just, they just don't have the flexibility to offer those things anymore. And it really frustrates me. And so, I feel like we're in a time that um, there's a lot of opportunity for us to
Hmm.
actually get to work on changing the funding system now that the
Hmm.
reassessments have gone through.
Hmm.
I'm expecting big changes this year when we go back in January.
Wow. Well, that's encouraging. That's encouraging. Just one last question about sort of your whole experience being in office. Um, sometimes things go the way we want them to, and sometimes they don't. What's it been like for you? Some of the high points and some of the most challenging moments that when you say, "Wow, I'm in this because I really care," and I remember when it was great, and I remember when this didn't turn out the way I wanted it to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are so many, right? So I'm going into my 6th year now, which is crazy to think about. One of the like important moments for me was within the first year, where I had a Muslim mother reach out to me and ask, what are our school policies as a state when it comes to religious holidays and attendance? And I was like, I don't know. Let me see. And I reached out to the governor's administration, and they were like, we don't have one. There isn't a statewide policy on that. And the concern was when Islamic holidays fall on school days, and we have this tension in the family where the parents might want the kid to spend time with the family and the community, and the kid is like, I want perfect attendance. Or, I have an exam that day and I don't want to take a makeup because the review was in class the day before and it's fresh, and there's that experience. And so she was like, well, what can we do to protect students from having to make that decision, right? And I use this example for myself as a reminder, because as optimistic as I am and idealistic as I am, I had that experience and I still was like resigned to the fact that that's just how it is as like a religious minority. But because the concern was brought to me from a constituent, I went to work on it. And we looked at what other states do. We worked with the department. We worked with stakeholders in the school board leadership and in the administrative leadership. And within my first year of office, we were able to get legislation passed that requires that religious holidays be excused absences. They not count against perfect attendance and things like that. And also require that the schools pay attention to their populations and try to build their calendars around times when students are often not going to be in. Within a year after that, multiple school districts started having off from school for those holidays because their populations were so large. And if you had said that would happen 2 years prior to me, I would have been like, yeah, right, never. But it was because the community asked for it that, I went to work. And I honestly surprised myself with what we were able to accomplish together. It's also a great example because it was an opportunity for the community to show up to committee hearings. And it was within the years we were doing the pandemic virtual session. And we've since kept virtual abilities for folks to come and testify. But my colleagues were able to hear from students, from teachers, their experiences. And some folks who originally didn't support the legislation actually ended up adding their names to it as co-sponsors after hearing from the community. And I think that was a really good opportunity for the community to see just how powerful your voice is and why it's important to be involved civically. So that's like a really great example, right? In between, lots of examples of me trying to get things done that did not get done. And I think part of what's frustrating is when you are someone like us who, you're big picture, you have this vision of how things could be so much better, and you want to get there right away. The incrementalism is really difficult and it's really exhausting to work through. And so, I feel like most years I leave session and I'm like, why am I doing this? all these great ideas that aren't going anywhere, And then you have a week like this week where, and I think we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about this, but with the way that reassessments happened, at least in Newcastle County, throughout July, I heard from so many constituents who were like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. I'm going to lose my house. And I don't have a full-time day job. I have a side hustle, which maybe we could talk about a little bit, but I canceled everything. Like I cleared my schedule and I worked 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, researching, drafting, working with our staff to figure out solutions. And then we went into special session this week. And despite my bills not being put on the agenda, which is something I'm used to, I was able to get 2 of those bills passed via amendment. So we were able to take some creative measures and get things done and actually deliver for constituents. And I got to say, it probably was the most effective legislative day I've ever had in my years now. And so I'm feeling kind of renewed and recharged right now. I'm just really excited about next year because I think with the hard work, with our really talented staff, with all the research that's been done from community groups for years, right, going back to the 70s on how we can do a better job here, I think we're going to deliver this year. And if we don't, I think there's really no excuse at this point. Right? There's no barrier to funding reform this year. Everything is like sitting there waiting for us to get to work. So I'm really excited, and I'm like trying to think of like depressing examples to share with you, but I'm like on a high right now.
Yeah. That's great.
And I'm gonna try to ride that as far as I can.
Good. I know I would agree with you on a lot of the points that you made. I think there's the skill. Is it a question of skill or will, and then So we've got the knowledge, but it's really the will to get it done. And then really the following is that where there's a will, there's a way, because if you actually want, you'll get it done. So there's something about commitment to the cause. There's something about, and it's work that's done not for the glory of getting it done, but for the good that you do for society. I mean,
Right.
that's the driving force.
Right.
And it saddens me a bit, and I think it's probably what drives me to do what I do with First Aid Educate, is that there's the collective good that we need to all be concerned about, and it's not what's best for me, it's what's best for society. And
Right.
how am I required to show up to ensure that we have a good society that is just, that is fair, that is, you know what I mean? And I just feel like that's just not part of the drumbeat that drives most of what I observe.
That tension, I think, so you mentioned that I graduated from the charter school of Wilmington, right?
Mhm.
So I was homeschooled for some time. I went to private Islamic school. I went to public school. I went to a charter school. I went to a public university. So I've experienced just about every type of schooling besides choice that we have in Delaware. And I remember when I first was like thinking about running, like the only thing that I cared about was public education. Like that was,
Mhm.
they were like, all right, well, what about the environment? And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, let's talk about the environment too. But like our schools need to be funded fairly.
Mhm.
That still is something that's like really important to me. And so I remember some folks online were like, oh, but she went to charter.
Uh-huh.
She's going to be one of those people who's like, charter schools are the answer.
Mhm.
And I really do not believe that they are. And the reason I'm sharing this is the tension that you're talking about, right?
Mhm.
When we talk about public education, a lot of times people think about like, yeah, there's a problem, but I don't want my kids to have to deal with it.
Right.
Like figure it out. But until
Yeah.
you do, my kids are going to private school. My kids are going to charter school, whatever,
Mhm.
like if I had had a laptop at the time, I would have done a PowerPoint to my parents on why I didn't want to go to charter. But
Uh-huh.
I think a pretty skilled presentation for,
Uh-huh.
an 11, 12-year-old of like why
Uh-huh.
I didn't want to go. It had
Uh-huh.
nothing to do with school funding and everything to do with the fact that my friends were all going to the local public school.
Uh-huh.
But years later, having graduated from that school, had that experience, and then married to my husband who went to the school I would have gone to had I
Uh-huh.
not gone to charter, and being able to see the difference in the resources that we received in the classroom, the experiences that we received because of the expertise of our teachers. And
Uh-huh.
like one of the stories he always shares with me is about how he took an AP course, but he couldn't take the exam because the teacher had a breakdown during the middle of the school year, and they didn't get a substitute that was able to teach them to be
Wow.
able to succeed in that exam.
Uh-huh.
My experience, if you took an AP course, you had to take the exam because the school found it so important to the reputation that
Uh-huh.
we, knock every AP exam out of the park. I
Uh-huh.
think the one class that I kind of didn't fully, apply myself in the most, I got a
Uh-huh.
4 on the exam
Uh-huh.
because it was like we were taught to the exam.
Uh-huh.
At the same time, I also recognize that a lot of my experience at the Charter School of Wilmington was kind of like college, where you have students that show up ready to learn with parents at home who are very tough on them and have also graduated from college and
Uh-huh.
have the resources to get them SAT prep and get them tutoring if they need it and all those things. And so a lot of my classes, we showed up and they were like, do the work. Okay, I'm going to sit down. And it was kind of professing, it wasn't teaching.
Uh-huh.
And so I've gotten some pushback over the years from folks in the charter school like space that, say she's anti-charter. And like, I kind of am. I kind of am a
Uh-huh.
little bit
Uh-huh.
because I think the charter school ecosystem in Delaware is a symptom of a problem, but it's exacerbated the problem when it comes to funding our schools equitably.
Uh-huh.
And in my area, we have so many schools that are popping up, pulling resources. I mean, if you sit on my block in my neighborhood, you will see so many school buses coming down the road
Really? Yeah.
with
Yeah.
just a couple kids on them, right? And
Uh-huh.
like,
Uh-huh.
there's so many issues, in my opinion, that come from the fact that we don't have school centers, like community
Uh-huh.
centers, as our
Uh-huh.
schools anymore. One street, May every year, and you're going to see different banners for every high school in the county,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
proud graduate of. It's there's no like community
Right.
cohesion.
Yeah.
It's really difficult for our school boards to allocate resources to the schools within the district because we have so many kids that are choicing out, that are going to
Sure.
charters, so people can make their opinions of like where I am on the spectrum of like pro charter to charter, anti charter,
Uh-huh.
but I do think that we really need to take a look at the way that we're funding our schools, and we need to be critical of it. Um, I don't know if I have the answer on that one, but I think my experience having been in both the public school space and the charter school space gives
Mhm.
me a unique perspective where I want the experience that I had at charter to be the experience of any student in our state,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
just one whose parents knew to apply in advance,
Sure.
or had the resources to drive them out of their
Mhm.
neighborhood.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's coming across, but I feel very passionately about that.
Yeah, it's coming
um,
across. I think I'm hearing it. I think that the listeners are hearing
Getting
it.
a little
I
worked up over here.
Yeah, but I don't think I mean, I'm not hearing I'm hearing a rational statement of a reasoned opinion, right? I mean, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. I think public discourse, I think dialogue, I think exploration, I think questioning. The last phrase you used of being critical of something, I think being critical has a connotation of being negative, but critical thinking is a strength. It's an asset,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
The other thing I hear in what you're saying is that you're cognizant that this is a system level problem, and we can't solve a system level problem with individual fixes that only deal with
Exactly.
symptoms, right?
Absolutely.
But there is a political risk. There's a lot of political capital. People go to do these things, and you've got to be, I find myself to be one of these people. When push comes to shove, if you have to leave it all on the line, I will leave it all if I believe it's the
Yes.
right thing to do,
Yes.
irrespective of the personal cost, because it was the
Exactly.
right thing to do,
Right. That's
period.
so, when I think back on advice I've gotten from elected officials over the years that, you know, I don't agree with on many things,
Mhm,
but the advice that they've given has almost always been the same, which is you need to know what you're willing to lose over, right?
right.
Like, what is so important to you that it doesn't matter if you lose your
Mhm,
reelection? This
mhm,
is that issue.
mhm.
Like, there are
Yeah.
probably a few for me, but, if even before I won my first election, I remember writing in my journal, and I have it somewhere at home, where I wrote to future me from past
Mhm,
me. And, you know, I've told my friends this, like, if you start to notice this change in me, like, get me out of there.
uh-huh,
Get me out of there, because I think talking about system problems, right? I think there is like a almost like natural way that being in elected office impacts you. Like
mm,
your ego, your values. Like I remember I told a professor of mine that I was thinking of running, and he was like, well, it was nice knowing you. Like, like kind
mhm.
of like, well, you seemed like a good person, but you
But
that's gone now. And so I think, somebody's in office for 20 years and they're not staying true to the values they had when they first were elected.
mhm.
That's kind of to be expected,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, which is bleak, I guess. But I think I've tried to be really intentional about
sure.
what's important to me before I get elected
Yeah,
needs to remain important to me,
yeah.
despite whatever, because you get in this space and there's all these voices
Oh,
that are like,
sure.
well, actually, it's been a
Yeah,
problem because it needs to be a problem. You don't understand it enough to know that we need the problem.
right.
And it's like,
Well,
actually, I think that's wrong. And I'm
so
going to
I think
continue
some
to like
things
push back on that.
for real, I think two things you said. One, I think some things are problems, and they are problems by design, and they perpetuate an imbalance of power. So for some people, there's a vested interest in not
Yes,
solving certain problems because it perpetuates oppression and
absolutely.
marginalization.
Absolutely.
So
And there's a lot of actors. So, people talk about lobbyists, right? There are a lot of lobbyists that make their money
money
by
off of
having the
having a problem. Sure,
problem to solve
sure.
forever, you
Mhm,
know?
mhm.
So I don't know. I can't remember where we started on this. I'm all like
Well, sorry, but I want to go. It's a great
But-
conversation. I would love to have you back on because I feel like there's so many things to talk about, and the time just is flying. But you mentioned something about letter from past self to future self, or like today, and to, what I want to be in the future. So we just built. You probably know this, but First Aid Educate we're the only organization that is just focused on building school board capacity, right? We're not doing anything else other than trying to get people to understand what the board does, get the people who are on the board the supports that they need, get more people to run for board, right? That's it. Just because the whole system will improve if everybody's got access to the information. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
So we made a training course for all the newly elected school board members, right? And we're doing this of our own. Some people voluntarily, it's not required. Okay, so it's on our Knowledge Hub. There are worksheets, literally what you just said, whereas like, what's important to me today? There's a 30-day mark when you come back. There's a 60-day mark when you come back. Right? This idea of this reflective practitioner of honoring those commitments that are so clear to you in the day that you get seated and sworn in. But it is all the interfering factors that distract and delude. And without that discipline of practice, that I don't think it's fair. I mean, it's great that you did, but I don't think it's fair to assume that everyone's going to come to the table knowing to self-design that. I think it's the responsibility for us to bring that.
Absolutely.
But I love that. And I don't know without that. And people can see their own strengths and weaknesses. Like, 30 days, I thought I was going to do this, but I didn't. But what happened? I think you're much more likely to be able to reach consensus with a colleague when you can recognize your own limitations instead of just constantly looking at someone like, you didn't do this and you didn't do that, and like, nobody's perfect, dude. Like, we've got to get there together.
It's a good reminder too for those moments that I didn't share the low points where you're like, why am I doing this? Like, this is pointless. And when you remind yourself, when your past self reminds the current you, right, why you're doing this,
right?
A colleague of mine, when I was a staffer, had this practice that I'm like proselytizing. Like, I spread it everywhere. We shared an office, and she was like, I have like a happy emails folder. Right? Because the job that at the time we were taking all the phone calls, right? So we're getting people screaming at us. And a lot of times it's because they're having the worst day of their lives and they need help. But you're just getting the worst day of someone's life over and over, right? So we had this practice of whenever she got a happy email, someone that was like, thank you so much. What you did changed my life in this way, right? She put it in there. And so I have an inbox that I call happy/special /interesting because sometimes it's like not really nice, but it's just funny kind of stuff too. And I found that over time, I don't even need to go in there. Just knowing that I have that inbox is the why, right? Like, it's easy to get caught up, and there's a name for it, confirmation bias, maybe, where like, if you're looking for the problem, you're gonna see it, right? So if you're in that mindset that like, this is pointless, I never get anything done, I can't make the progress for my community that I want to make for my community, then you're gonna feel like that. But if you even for a moment remember, there's a overflowing folder in my inbox of people who have stopped me to say, what you did mattered, what you did changed the trajectory of my family's life. Then you're like, wait a minute, there is a reason for me to do this. And it's every person like that, right? And sometimes it's difficult because you would love for it to be every student, not just the one student that you were able to touch their life. But I should probably hit her up. It's been a while since we talked about the inbox, but I should hit her up and remind her like how much it's been helpful for me now, almost 10 years later. And I try to share that with people that are thinking about running for office, and they're like, how do you keep going? How do you? And I'm like, happy email. It's not just emails, right? Like, that's like a physical kind of manifestation of it. But like every election day when I'm standing in front of an elementary school, people are like, I remember you got me my unemployment check. I remember, and it's like, you're helping people every day. And you could think about how things would be different if you weren't in that position to do that, right? Like, would someone have taken the time to do that?
So many of the things that you're sharing, I think, are so relevant for board leadership, and it's another reason why we exist, is that the importance of those roles, the decision making that those individuals do, the implications that, I mean, they are the most direct elected body that's impacting a
Yeah.
classroom, right? Like the work
Yeah.
that gets done in Dover is important, and there needs to be a state legislative architecture. But the allocation of funds, the policies that are made, the selection and evaluation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like everything that you're saying is so, so important to school board members it's not an easy job. I mean, they're not
No,
faced with
I'd
choice.
argue it's more difficult.
Yeah.
Because the school board, I mean, you have less staffing. Like I would love to have a larger staff, but like I have more institutional support than the average school board member. I get paid,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I probably have more happy emails, right? I think school
Mm-hmm.
board members tend to take on even more oncoming than
Mm-hmm.
we do. Right now, like over the past month or so with the reassessment debacle, whatever you want to call it, the school board members and our school district leadership have been like,
Under
they've taken
fire.
on so much, oh my God, like
Mm-hmm.
unfairly. And I think when you have a situation like this, where, in my opinion, a lot of elected officials have a lot of blame to share, myself included, it's very easy if you're someone who doesn't take accountability or someone who is not does not have integrity to point fingers at someone that's an easy target. And I've been really disappointed in a lot of my colleagues who've pointed at school district leadership, and it's been driving me up a wall.
Mm.
Um, and it's like, people point their fingers at us for stuff that's not our fault, but we've stepped forward into a role where you have to have thick skin. You have to be able to
Mm-hmm.
like push through it. But like our CFOs they're not elected officials,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then our school board members are like, they're employers. So I can't
Right.
imagine how difficult it must be to be a volunteer,
Mm-hmm.
like you're volunteering your time and
Yeah.
expertise
Yeah.
to give back to the community, and you're watching your dedicated staff get
Mm-hmm.
maligned every day in the press.
Yeah.
Like, so I've been trying to do my part to take the blame away from them, right? And be like, no, no,
Mm-hmm.
no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We should have done some things, and like outline what those things could have been and what we
Mm-hmm.
should be doing moving forward. But I will not stand idly by and listen to people malign our school board leadership, because they're
Mm-hmm.
not the ones who got us in this situation. And if anything, they've been the ones to rise to the occasion to help us out of the mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that's wonderful. I appreciate you saying that. I think I appreciate that. I appreciate that for our work, for the people that we try to serve, and for everyone who's listening, right? To hear those great things about that their work
It's
is
just the
valued.
truth, man. It's the
Yeah.
truth. We were down in Legislative Hall, and there were some questions that came up, and one of the CFOs was in the room and he's like, I know the answers. And I was texting him like, you're the MVP, man. You are our most
Mm-hmm.
valuable player. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to put yourself out there, and like they're taking phone calls from people that are really like, they don't know what to do.
Sure. Sure.
And they're meeting them with compassion and empathy and bringing those stories to us. And so I have a lot of respect for our school board
Mm-hmm.
leadership across the state, and I think we could do a lot better for our students if we worked more collaboratively. So that's
Yeah,
something that I'm planning
1,000%.
to do more of.
Yeah, 1,000%. We had last year, the Voices, Vision and Voices, the first event after the election, and we're going to make it an annual thing where we bring together the newly elected board members, the president, the vice president, and all the elected officials in Dover, because we believe what you just said. There has to be collaboration, there has to be alignment, there has to be communication,
Right.
and when we
Right.
align all the pieces, the work becomes much easier.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
Right.
if there's a silver lining from this crazy
Mm-hmm.
property tax reassessment chaos, it's that I think a lot of us are at that conclusion, and we're ready to work together. So I'm excited about that.
Great. So this is, I wish we had more time. I do want to end on a positive note. I want to ask one more question. I hope that you'll come back. I think there's so much more that we could talk about. But I want to know, like, could you share with us what's your vision for public education in Delaware, and how does this funding formula play into that?
So what I would like to see is, instead of a student at the age of 12 deciding I'm a musician, or I like languages, or I'm an athlete, or I want to be a plumber, I would love for a Delaware student, no matter where they live, to be able to go to their neighborhood school and explore any of those things. Not feel locked in, not feel like they have to make that decision. If I was locked in at 11 or 12 to what I
Mhm.
was supposed to do now, I wouldn't be on this
Mhm.
podcast with you right now.
Right. Right.
And so, people talk about options, like our students need options. I think our
Mhm.
students should have options within the building and not have to choose what building they go to school to.
Mhm.
And so when I think about the funding system, I think that means that we need to consolidate our resources in buildings, not spread them. And I think we need to really take a look at tax burden, right? So I'm trying not to get super technical about this, but when we talk about the referendum process, we're asking a lot of times people that are already cash strapped to put more
Mhm.
money into their schools, and they do it over and over and over again.
Mhm.
What I'd like to see is for all of us to put the money in and for it to come out in a way that's fair. So
Mhm.
areas that can afford it get less, and
Mhm.
areas that can't get more.
Get more. Mhm.
And that's what we're doing in lots of other states in our country. And I
Yeah.
think it's time for us to come to the current day. I'm not going to say
Yeah.
future because I don't think we're getting to the future, but we got to
Mhm.
get out of the past.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of states that have implemented this, and I think there's a lot of lessons to learn. And I think the principle has been around since like 1965 when they started the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. I mean, the federal government was trying to offset that discrepancy or
Right.
the disparate incomes. So I think it makes sense, and I think the investment of research. There's a lot of money that, and I'm not saying there should be more, there shouldn't be
Yes.
more. There's a lot of
Right.
money, and
Right.
from my vantage point, I am eager to see the return on that investment in the sense that I put in these resources and I get this out on the other side, and that there's some sense of accountability, collective,
Mm,
right? I don't want
yes,
to point the finger.
absolutely.
We all bear some responsibility, but we have to move from continuing to do the same thing when we know we're not getting a different result, and then just putting
Yes.
more money behind
Yes.
it thinking that it's going to be different in some
Yeah.
way.
And I think to say it more succinctly, I guess, I think we can tax people fairly and fund our schools
Mhm.
equitably,
Mhm.
right? And I've
Yeah.
been hearing a lot of like there's this tension, like you got to pay more. Don't you care about schools? And I
Mhm.
think that folks that are really worried about paying more shouldn't be asked to,
Mhm.
right? Like we can do this in a way that's fair. We can fund our schools without asking a woman who's in her 70s, who's on a fixed income, to just keep
Mhm.
paying more and more. Like
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think both those things can be true. So that's my vision, right?
Yeah,
Like I would love
great,
for
great.
that. So yeah,
Yep. Well, again, I really do hope you'll come back on. I think there's so much more that we could talk about. Um,
definitely. Yeah.
Thank you, and I'll share just quickly that we're building out training and professional development to help with the implementation of this. I mean, when all of those resources come down, there's no basis. We need this year to build the foundation, so when that changes, people have the skills that they need to make the right, effective decisions.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
there's a
Yeah.
lot
Well,
more for us to talk about then.
amazing work. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much. For me, it was a great conversation. I'm going to take with me the happy email box. I think I don't have one, so I think I could use one. I like that we talked about the importance of the community getting involved and the community seeing when their voice is heard, the kind of influence, but then that people who are in leadership, whether it's elected or not, choosing to do the thing because we care about what the society we live in, and we want things to be good for everybody, and that's why we get up. And the last thing that I think we share is, are you willing to lose over it? Like, are you people, if
Yeah.
once you're clear on that, I think all the other decisions become really, really easy to make.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Medina, thank you so much. Thank you for your work. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about education. A pleasure to have you, and I look forward to having you back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. All right. To our listeners, thanks for joining us. Check out the Knowledge Hub. There's more information on the tax reassessments, on the reassessments and the school taxes. And we look forward to seeing you again on another podcast of Leading Together. Thanks.